Chapter 11. A sharp pain shot through Edward's side, followed by a throbbing headache. He winced, then slowly peeled one eye open, then the other, blinking against the fluorescent light overhead. Almost instantly, Florence Kong appeared at his side. She moved quickly, her professionalism on display in the quiet urgency of her steps. From the moment he had come out of surgery, she had claimed him as her patient, and this was a responsibility she took very seriously. She fussed over him, willed him to recover, and spoke to him as though he were a close friend, even while he was still in a coma. "You're awake," she said softly, already reaching for the blood pressure cuff. Edward groaned in response, still dazed, as she slipped the cuff onto his arm and took readings from the monitor, asking questions he barely registered. Before he could protest, she placed the tablet on his tongue and pressed a cool cup of water to his lips. "Swallow this one for me, love," she said in the sing-song tone only nurses could use while still commanding full authority. He complied. After a few moments, she gently adjusted his position, propped him up against a mountain of pillows. The movement tugged at the tubes threaded into his arm. "Rest a bit, I'll check on you shortly," she said, giving him a small nod before disappearing out of the private room. Edward exhaled deeply, grateful for the moment of peace. The fuss was something he was not used to. His mum had learnt the hard way not to fuss over him, and Rachael only fussed briefly. He had always pushed her away when she tried. She had learned quickly not to smother him, to love him quietly, from a distance if she had to, and now that distance had stretched beyond reach. He didn't know where she was or what she was going through, and that thought made his head throb even more. He reached slowly for the remote and flicked on the television. The BBC blinked to life, as if fate were playing a cruel trick. The first image to appear was hers. Rachael. A shaky mobile phone video played on loop, her being led into a police station by two uniformed officers. Beneath the clip, the headline scrolled across the screen in bold letters. "Immigrant partner questioned as media air remains critical." It sucked the air out of the room. Edward's hand tightened around the remote. His knuckles blanched white. Tendons stood out beneath his skin. A spike rippled through the heart monitor, the machine beside him releasing a soft but insistent beep in protest. He ignored it. He changed the channel. Sky News. The same headline, the same judgment in the anchor's voice. Another flick. CNN. Even across the Atlantic, they were tearing into her. They were wrong about her. The nurse poked her head around the door as the monitor escalated. "Mr. Hale, are you all right? Your heart rate just..." "I'm fine," he said too quickly. He wasn't, but the only thing worse than the pain in his chest was the fire in his gut. They were going to crucify her. Florence looked at the screen. Satisfied with the display, she left him to himself the second time. Edward knew her face, her name, her story would be twisted into something grotesque. She was already on trial in the court of public opinion, and she hadn't even had a chance to speak. He turned off the TV. Not long after, his surgeon walked in. Oliver Kensington hesitated at the foot of the bed, clipboard in hand, his face carefully masked. He glanced down at the notes, though he already knew them, the scans, the results, and the prognosis. "Edward," he began, then stopped. He removed his glasses. "The internal bleeding was significant. We've stabilized it for now, but your organs have suffered extensive trauma. The puncture to your lung has compromised your breathing more than we anticipated." Edward watched him closely. "So," the consultant's mouth flattened into a line. "We're doing everything we can," Oliver said, but... Edward didn't need the rest. Every breath already felt like inhaling through broken glass. "Thank you," Edward murmured. He couldn't remember the exact words that followed. "Is there anyone I can call for you?" "No, thank you." Oliver lingered, then nodded respectfully and left. There was no time for self-pity. Only one thought consumed him now: Rachael. She had been a storm in his life, beautiful, unpredictable, scarred, but resilient. When he had first met her in that cafe off Old Compton Street, he had known, without knowing why, that he was already in trouble. He had never regretted it, not even now. Whatever had happened that night, it wasn't malice. But the world didn't know what he knew. She needed someone to fight for her. With effort, Edward shifted against the pillows and reached for the bedside table. His hand shook as it closed around his phone. The movement sent a fresh pulse of pain through his chest. He waited for it to ease before drawing a breath. He made the first call on instinct, then another. Voices came and went, all measured, all careful, and each time, when he explained who needed defending, the line cooled. One firm declined outright. Another suggested, too gently, that he should focus on his recovery. One even implied that asking for representation for the perpetrator bordered on insanity. Even the law had already taken sides. Edward stared at the ceiling, jaw tight, and scrolled again. One firm remained. King Solicitors. Emmanuel King worked alone. The receptionist's voice was polite but final and confirmed his worst fears. They were not taking new cases for months. Edward ended the call and closed his eyes. For a moment, the machines beside him were the only sound in the room, steady and indifferent to his predicament. Then he dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It rang once. Edward? The voice on the other end was older now, from the last time they spoke. You should be getting all the rest you can, son. You shouldn't be calling from hospital. Edward smiled faintly. Judge King was his godfather. Your lordship, I wouldn't call, Edward rasped, despite his struggle to breathe, if it weren't important. There was a slight pause. How are you holding up? I'm still here, Edward murmured. The weight of those words was not missed. Tell me, the judge said quietly, what is it you need? Edward closed his eyes. Even that tiny act exhausted him. I need Emmanuel to represent Rachael as pro bono. Judge King didn't answer immediately. You care for her deeply, he said at last. I love her. Unconditionally, Edward replied simply, and she is not what they're already making her out to be. Another pause. Edward pressed, worried this might be another failed cause. Emmanuel's secretary said they are not taking any more cases. That is why I'm hoping as pro bono there might be something that can be done in that regard. I desperately need the best legal mind to represent her. I'll speak to him, the judge said finally. His voice was steady and certain. That much I can do. A breath of relief escaped Edward's lungs. Thank you, Judge, he murmured, truly. One more thing, Edward whispered. Please, is there a chance I can see her, in case... He couldn't finish. The judge didn't make him. I am retired, but I know I can still pull some strings, the judge responded. Rest now, I'll take care of it. Thank you, Edward whispered. The line clicked dead, leaving Edward alone again with the sound of the machines hooked to his athletic body. Now, all he had to do was wait to see Rachael, because she needed him, he thought to himself. He closed his eyes at that thought and let sleep take over. The next day, with the ward dim, the lights lowered to a perpetual twilight that blurred time. Machines hummed softly at Edward's bedside. Their steady beeps marked each fragile second as he remained tethered to life. A cannula ran into his arm. A chest drain disappeared beneath the sheets. Detective Inspector Tomlin stood at the foot of the bed, his posture formal, hands clasped behind his back. Detective Constable Dorsey hovered to one side, tablet already in hand, stylus poised. Mr. Hale, Tomlin said quietly, I'm D.I. James Tomlin. This is DC Ella Dorsey. We're here to take a statement about the incident with Rachael Brown. Edward's gaze drifted between them, unfocused at first, then sharpened with recognition. His breathing hitched. "No," he rasped. Dorsey glanced at Tomlin, surprised by the immediacy of Edward's response. "Mr. Hale," Tomlin continued evenly, "we understand this is difficult, but your account is important. You're the victim here." Edward swallowed. His throat worked painfully. His fingers curled weakly into the sheet. "I said no." Dorsey stepped forward. "We only need to establish what happened, whether you were threatened, whether there was—" "She didn't mean to," Edward interrupted, the effort leaving him breathless. His chest rose and fell erratically. The monitor responded with an agitated beep. Tomlin's jaw tightened. "Is Rachael Brown responsible for inflicting this wound on you, Mr. Hale?" Edward turned his head away, towards the window where the city lights blurred into a smear of gold and shadow. "I won't say anything," he said hoarsely. "You need to leave." The silence stretched. Dorsey's tone hardened. "Mr. Hale, refusing to cooperate doesn't stop the process. The Crown will move forward with or without your statement." Edward's eyes slid back to them, glassy but resolute. "Then do what you want," he said, "but I won't help you hurt her." Before Tomlin could respond, the curtain around the bed was pulled back sharply. "That's enough." Florence Conger stood there, arms folded, her expression unyielding. "He's not fit for an interview," she said firmly. "His oxygen levels are unstable, and his heart rate has spiked since you arrived." Tomlin straightened. "We're well within protocol." "No," she cut in, "you're not. Visiting hours are over, and questioning him in this state will leave him worse off. Besides, he has already given you his answer, and you won't take it." Edward's eyes closed briefly. Relief washed over his face. Florence turned to him, softening. "I need you to rest now." Then, back to the officers, the steel returned. "You'll have to leave." Tomlin held her gaze for a moment. "Very well," he said at last. He stepped closer to Edward and lowered his voice. "For the record, Mr. Hale," he said, "charges will be pursued regardless of your cooperation. The Crown believes there is sufficient evidence to proceed." Edward didn't respond. His breathing had steadied. His face turned away once more. Dorsey tapped a final note into her tablet. The nurse drew the curtain with finality. "It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs." 1 Corinthians 13, verse 5.